The house at Cedar Creek had been abandoned for as long as anyone could remember. Its wooden beams groaned under the weight of decades, paint peeled in long, curling strips, and the windows stared blankly like the empty eyes of a skull. Locals whispered about it in hushed tones, warning anyone who would listen, "Stay away, or you'll see the Faceless One." No one knew exactly what it meant, only that those who dared enter never came out the same. Some never came out at all. But curiosity has a way of overpowering caution. That night, I found myself standing at the rusted gate, the moon casting silver streaks over the cracked pathway. A chill ran down my spine, not from the cold, but from the sense that I was being watched. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and decayed wood, a scent that seemed to reach into my lungs and settle there, heavy and suffocating. I hesitated, hand resting on the gate, when I heard it, a soft, almost imperceptible whisper that carried across the yard. "You shouldn't be here." My heart slammed against my ribs as the wind picked up, carrying with it the faint echoes of laughter, or perhaps crying. I couldn't tell. With each step toward the house, the boards creaked beneath my feet, and I felt a presence growing stronger, darker, like something was following me just beyond the edge of my vision. The stories I had heard in town flashed through my mind, children disappearing without a trace, strange lights flickering in the windows, doors slamming shut on their own, and the unmistakable feeling that someone, was always watching. My hand touched the doorknob, icy and unyielding, and for a moment I thought I saw movement behind the shattered glass, a shadow, humanoid, but with a blankness where a face should have been. I froze, every nerve screaming, yet unable to look away. The shadow raised a hand, beckoning me silently, and a voice, hollow and void of emotion, whispered my name. "Come." It wasn't a friendly invitation. It wasn't human. Panic surged, but my curiosity anchored me, and I pushed open the door. The air inside was colder than outside, unnaturally so, carrying the scent of old blood and burnt wood. My flashlight flickered, and in the brief moments of darkness, I felt it. Eyes, unseen yet piercing, burning into my soul. The locals had said the Faceless One only appears to those who are alone, those whose fear is palpable. And now I understood why. Every step forward, the floorboards seemed to stretch endlessly, hallways twisting in impossible angles. Whispers surrounded me, incoherent yet threatening, and the shadows on the walls began to move as if alive, converging, shaping into something unearthly. And then, at the end of the hallway, I saw it. A figure, tall, faceless, standing perfectly still, its presence radiating a darkness that pressed against my chest. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't obey. The silence was deafening. And then it smiled. Not with a mouth, not with eyes, but with a feeling, a sense of pure malice that filled the room. My breath caught. I realized with a horrifying clarity that it knew me, knew everything, and worse, it was waiting for me. If you think you're brave enough to uncover what happens next, hit that subscribe button. Follow me as I venture deeper into the shadows of Cedar Creek, where the Faceless One lurks, and no one is truly safe. The road to Cedar Creek was narrower than I expected, winding through thick pine forests, the kind that block out the sun and make the shadows stretch like dark fingers. I had driven hours, following the directions a local had whispered to me at the diner, half warning, half dare. "You don't want to go there after sunset," he said, polishing his coffee mug with a rag that had seen better days. "Some folks say the house, it chooses who enters, and once it does, it never lets go." I had laughed, of course, an easy, nervous laugh, but even as I drove on, the unease settled in my stomach like cold stones. When I first saw the house, it was worse than I had imagined. The two-story structure leaned slightly, its wooden planks warped and cracked, windows gaped open, jagged teeth of broken glass glinting in the fading sunlight. The porch sagged dangerously on one side, boards rotting beneath the weight of years of neglect. But it wasn't just the decay that unnerved me, it was the silence. No birds, no wind rustling the trees, just the faint whisper of something moving inside. Locals in Cedar Creek had told me stories about the house for years, that it once belonged to a wealthy landowner, Mr. Hollister, who vanished mysteriously in the 1920s. Rumor had it he practiced strange rituals in the attic, attempting to communicate with spirits he believed would grant him eternal life. Some said he succeeded, others said he failed, and his own experiment turned against him. After that, anyone who stepped inside claimed to see a figure, faceless, observing, always waiting. Some nights, travelers reported doors slamming shut on their own, objects moving across rooms without touch, and whispers in the dark calling names that shouldn't have been spoken. I parked the car and stepped onto the gravel driveway. The air smelled of damp wood and something else, coppery, almost like blood. My boots crunched on broken branches as I approached the porch. The locals' warnings echoed in my mind. Don't enter alone, don't disturb anything, and never call out to the spirits. But the house seemed to pull me in, magnetic and malevolent. I pushed the front door. It creaked loudly, like a groan of protest from some trapped soul. Dust swirled in the weak sunlight streaming through the shattered windows, and the floorboards moaned under my weight. Each step forward felt heavier, as though the house itself resisted my presence. In the corner of the main hall, I noticed something, a faded photograph on the wall. The frame was cracked, and the picture was obscured by decades of grime. I wiped it with my sleeve. A family stared back, smiling, their eyes bright. But one face was missing, blank, empty. My stomach churned. Then, from somewhere upstairs, I heard it, the softest shuffle of footsteps, slow, deliberate. My pulse quickened, and I told myself it was just the wind or a raccoon. But the more I moved forward, the clearer the sound became, echoing through the house in a rhythm that seemed to match my heartbeat. I realized with a shiver that I wasn't just being watched, I was being followed. I paused at the base of the staircase, the air suddenly colder, heavier. A whisper floated down from the darkness above. "You shouldn't be here." It wasn't a threat, not exactly. It was a statement, empty yet full of malice. And for the first time, I understood why the locals avoided this place. Cedar Creek's house didn't just haunt you, it knew you, it studied you, and it waited. I had come to investigate, to uncover the truth, but as I climbed the stairs, the floor creaking with every step, I realized something terrifying. Maybe some truths weren't meant to be found. The night settled over Cedar Creek like a heavy blanket, smothering the landscape in darkness. The house seemed to breathe with it, groaning and creaking as if it had been waiting for the perfect moment to awaken. I sat on the edge of the sagging staircase, flashlight trembling in my hand. The beam flickered, revealing shadows that seemed to twitch and pulse along the walls. I told myself it was just the house settling, but deep down I knew the shadows were moving on their own, following me, keeping their distance yet watching every twitch of my fingers, every blink of my eyes. I decided to explore the upstairs rooms. Each door I passed was slightly ajar, as if someone or something had been waiting for me. The first bedroom was empty, save for a mattress rotting into the floorboards and a dresser coated in decades of dust. I ran my hand along it, and a shiver shot down my spine as I felt the faint outline of words scratched into the wood. "Leave before it sees you." The handwriting was jagged, erratic, and unsteady, like it had been carved in a panic. I swallowed hard, trying to dismiss the message as a warning from some previous trespasser, but the dread coiled tighter in my chest. Then I heard it. A soft footstep, deliberate, moving slowly across the floor behind me. I spun around, flashlight stabbing the darkness, but the hallway was empty. My pulse hammered in my ears as I whispered to myself, "It's just the wind, just the wind." But I knew it wasn't. The air had grown thick, almost viscous, pressing against my lungs, and the shadows seemed to stretch toward me, reaching from the corners of the ceiling. In the next room, I discovered a journal. Its pages yellowed with age, scrawled in a mix of English and Old Texan dialect, telling stories of the Hollister family and their strange rituals. One passage caught my eye. "The faceless watches. It waits, and those who see it do not escape unmarked." I felt a cold lump form in my stomach. The locals had told me about it, their voices hushed and hurried in the diner. "It's not just a ghost, it's something else, something hungry. Don't provoke it, don't call its name, don't look too long." Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from the attic. My flashlight swung toward the ceiling, illuminating nothing but thick shadows. I climbed the narrow staircase leading to the attic, each step groaning under my weight. The temperature dropped dramatically. My breath came out in visible puffs. Something shifted in the corner of my eye, a tall, dark figure moving silently, vanishing when I turned to look directly. A whisper drifted down from the rafters, low and unintelligible, like the murmur of wind through hollow bones. But I understood the meaning. Fear, malice, warning. I took a hesitant step back, and the whisper grew louder, more insistent, curling around my ears. "Do not linger. Leave while you can." My instinct screamed to obey, yet morbid curiosity kept my feet rooted. I noticed old trinkets scattered across the floor, a rusty horseshoe, a cracked porcelain doll, and faded photographs of people with blank faces. One photograph in particular made my blood run cold. It depicted a man standing at the foot of the staircase, faceless, staring directly into the camera, or perhaps into me. I stumbled backward, knocking over the journal, and it landed open on a page that seemed freshly written, ink glistening as if wet. "You are here now. I see you." I fled down the stairs, heart hammering, only to hear the front door slam shut behind me, leaving me in complete darkness. The house seemed alive, shifting, watching, waiting. Every shadow was a promise of something hiding, something patient and merciless. The locals weren't exaggerating. This wasn't just a haunted house, it was a trap, and I had stepped right into its jaws. And as I stood there trembling, I realized the first signs weren't just warnings. They were the beginning of a nightmare I might never wake from. The next morning, the sun barely penetrated the thick canopy of trees surrounding the house. I stayed in the car, notebook in hand, trying to make sense of what I had experienced the night before. But curiosity, stubborn and relentless, pulled me back toward the house. Before I could step inside, I drove into the small town of Cedar Creek, a scattering of wooden buildings and dusty streets where life seemed frozen in time. I needed to talk to someone who knew the stories firsthand. At the local diner, the chatter quieted as I entered. The waitress, a wiry woman with sun-weathered skin named Martha, eyed me with suspicion. "You're going to that old Hollister place, ain't you?" she asked, voice low. I nodded, trying to appear confident. She leaned in, whispering as though the walls themselves could listen. "People don't come back the same, or at all. They're stories, old ones, older than my mama. Hollister, he weren't just a man. He dabbled in things you don't want to touch, things that linger. They say he tried to bargain with something in the dark, and it didn't take kindly to him. That house, it remembers." Her words sent another chill down my spine. I asked her about the Faceless One. Martha's eyes darted toward the window, as if checking for unseen watchers, and she shook her head. "We don't speak its name loud, never. It's patient, and it's clever. Folks here say it's not a ghost, it's the soul of the house itself, hungry, waiting to fill the emptiness of the faces it steals. I learned that the house had been abandoned since the 1920s, but it had a long, dark history. There were whispers of the Hollister family performing rituals to protect their wealth and land, rituals that required offerings, sometimes human. Those who disappeared in Cedar Creek were said to have trespassed into sacred spaces or ignored warnings from spirits tied to the house. One elderly man had even told me that if you left a token, a coin, a trinket, a piece of your hair, the spirits might let you pass. But if you didn't, the Faceless One would mark you, follow you, and claim you eventually. The locals' customs fascinated me. On certain nights, they burned small candles at the edge of the forest, leaving offerings of food and small charms to appease the restless spirits. Children were never allowed near the woods after dark, and the unwritten rule was clear: never look at something that doesn't want to be seen. It was not superstition, it was survival. Driving back toward the house, I felt the air shift. The forest seemed thicker, shadows deeper, almost watching me as I approached. The house loomed ahead, silent yet oppressive. The rumors weren't just stories, they were warnings. And the moment I stepped out of the car, the wind seemed to carry a whisper, soft and deliberate. You know too much, and now you are mine. Inside, the remnants of the previous night felt heavier, almost accusing. Every corner seemed to hum with life. Old photographs stared back at me, and in one corner I thought I saw a fleeting shadow of the faceless figure just beyond the reach of the flashlight. I shivered. The locals hadn't lied. The Faceless One was patient, watching from the dark, learning, waiting for the moment fear would root me in place. That night, as I documented every creak, every shadow, every whisper, I realized that the rumors of Cedar Creek were not exaggerations. They were memories of what the house had done to those before me. And somehow, it knew I was here, and it had already begun to mark me as its next witness. The house wasn't just haunted, it was alive, and it was hungry. Night had fallen over Cedar Creek again, and the house seemed to exhale a cold, heavy breath as I stepped across the threshold. The air inside was thick with the scent of decay and damp wood, mingled with something metallic, almost like blood. My flashlight's beam quivered as I moved cautiously down the hallway, floorboards creaking under my weight. Every sound was amplified. The groan of the house, the distant rustle of trees against broken windows, the faint drip of water somewhere unseen. As I reached the middle of the hallway, I noticed something unsettling. The shadows along the walls weren't behaving naturally. They stretched and twisted, moving independently of the objects casting them. A coat hanging on a hook seemed to stretch upward like elongated fingers, and a chair's shadow writhed as if trying to crawl across the floor. My heart pounded. I whispered to myself that it was just my imagination, but the darkness didn't feel imaginary. It felt alive, observing, testing me. I moved forward, trying to remain calm, but then I saw it. Just for a moment, a flicker at the end of the hallway. A tall figure, featureless, standing completely still. Its presence was palpable, radiating cold that seeped into my bones. My breath caught, and my hands shook so violently that the flashlight beam danced erratically across the walls. The figure didn't move, yet I could feel its attention, like eyes boring into me, searching for fear. I tried to rationalize, a trick of the light, a shadow from the broken windows, but when I took a step closer, the figure shifted slightly. Not a movement of the body, but a shifting of the air around it, a subtle ripple that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. And then the shadows along the hallway began to pulse, like dark waves moving toward me, stretching, growing, reacting to my presence. I stumbled backward, knocking into a table. An old candle holder toppled, clattering across the floor, yet the shadows didn't falter. A whisper came from the walls themselves, low and sibilant, like dry leaves scraping against stone. "You shouldn't be here. You shouldn't have returned."
The sound wrapped around me, and for the first time I felt the full weight of the stories I'd heard in Cedar Creek. The locals weren't exaggerating. This house didn't just contain darkness, it commanded it, and it had noticed me. I retreated toward the staircase, but the shadows seemed to stretch further, following, enveloping, coiling around the corners of the hallway. My flashlight flickered, and in the brief darkness I thought I saw the faceless figure closer, now in the corner near the doorway, its silhouette unmoving yet menacing. I blinked, and it vanished, but the air remained heavy, almost pressing against me. I realized something terrifying. The house was testing me. It wanted to see my fear, to measure it, to understand it. The longer I stayed, the more it learned. Every creak, every breath, every twitch of my muscles was noted by whatever lurked in the shadows. And in that moment, I understood why the locals performed rituals at the forest edge, why children were forbidden near the woods at night, and why no one spoke the Faceless One's name aloud. It wasn't just superstition, it was survival. Suddenly, a door at the end of the hallway slammed shut with a deafening bang, rattling the walls and sending dust down like snowfall. My flashlight flickered violently, and I saw, for a brief, horrifying moment, the faceless figure standing in front of me, impossibly close, tall, featureless, radiating a darkness that seemed to swallow the light. My knees buckled, but I forced myself to move, stumbling past it toward the stairs. As I fled to the relative safety of the lower floor, a final whisper echoed in my ears, colder than the night outside. "I will wait, and I will see you again." The hallway fell silent once more, but I knew it wasn't gone. The shadows had eyes now, and the house was awake, and I was trapped inside its gaze.
By the 5th hour of the night, the house seemed to have fully awakened, breathing around me with a rhythm that matched my own terrified heartbeat. Every floorboard, every cracked wall vibrated with a life of its own. I had tried to take notes, to rationalize what was happening, but even the pen in my hand felt heavy, almost resisting movement, as if the house itself didn't want my story to be recorded. As I moved toward the back of the house, a faint sound reached my ears, a whisper. Soft at first, almost drowned by the creaking of the wood and the wind outside, but unmistakably human in tone. Yet there was something in it, a resonance that didn't belong to the natural world. It was like the house was speaking through a chorus of voices, layered and distorted, each syllable stretching unnaturally, carrying messages I could barely comprehend. "You don't belong here," the whisper said, curling around the corners of the room. I froze. My flashlight's weak beam trembled as I swung it toward the source, but the air was empty. Shadows clung to the walls, pulsing subtly, as if breathing with a consciousness of their own. Then another voice, higher, almost childlike, whispered, "Leave, or join me forever." My skin crawled, and I realized that the voices weren't just warnings, they were taunting me, feeding off my fear. I tried to respond, voice shaking, "Who's there?" My words seemed to vanish in the thick air, swallowed by the walls. The whispers intensified, overlapping, creating an almost musical cadence that was both hypnotic and horrifying. It felt like hundreds of unseen eyes were watching, judging, following my every move. I could hear faint scratching like fingernails on wood, echoing from every direction. I shivered violently. The house wasn't just haunted, it was alive. Moving cautiously, I followed the sound to a small room at the end of the hall. The walls were covered in old wallpaper, faded and peeling, but the whispering grew stronger here. I could almost make out fragments of sentences written in a combination of old Texan dialect and English. "It sees you. It knows you. It waits." I placed my hand on the wall. It was icy cold,
far colder than the night air outside. The whispering became louder, and for a moment I could swear the voices were coming from inside me, resonating within my own chest. Suddenly, a gust of wind slammed through the broken windows, scattering papers and debris across the floor. The whispers rose into a cacophony, overlapping voices screaming, murmuring, and hissing all at once. My flashlight flickered, then went out completely. In the pitch darkness, I felt it, a presence, immense and oppressive, brushing against me, as if the house itself had extended a shadowy hand. My breathing grew shallow, panic clawed at my mind. Then a single clear whisper broke through the chaos. "You cannot hide. I see you." It wasn't just a voice, it was an accusation, a claim, and a promise. The shadows in the room seemed to pulse in response, stretching and bending unnaturally toward me. I stumbled backward, tripping over a broken chair. As I scrambled to my feet, I caught a glimpse of movement in the corner of my eye, a tall, faceless silhouette standing perfectly still, watching. My stomach churned with a mix of terror and disbelief. The whispers didn't stop. They followed me as I backed out of the room, trailing along the hallway, clinging to the walls, whispering my name in tones that made my blood run cold. Each syllable seemed to burrow into my mind, planting fear so deep that I could feel it in my bones. The house had a voice, and it was speaking directly to me. By the time I returned to the staircase, the whispers had receded into an eerie silence, leaving only the faint echo of one last word: soon. My heart pounded in my chest, and I realized that this was only the beginning. The Faceless One wasn't just watching, it was communicating, marking me, and preparing for what was to come.
By midnight, the house had become a labyrinth of shadows and whispers. Every step I took echoed through the hallways, twisting and amplifying in ways that made it impossible to tell where one room ended and another began. The flashlight trembled in my hands, its beam weak, flickering against walls that seemed to pulse as if breathing. Then I heard it, the unmistakable sound of movement, deliberate and slow, above me on the second floor. I froze, my ears straining. Each creak of the floorboards was matched by another step, perfectly synchronized, though I could see no one. My pulse pounded so hard I was certain the figure would hear it, follow it. I remembered the locals' warnings. If you see it, it sees you. If it sees you, it never forgets. My heart raced as a cold realization set in. I had seen enough shadows, heard enough whispers. It was time. From the darkness at the top of the staircase, a presence emerged. At first, I thought it was merely a trick of the flashlight, but then I saw it clearly. Tall, humanoid, featureless. No eyes, no mouth, no nose, just a smooth, blank void where a face should be. My stomach turned, my legs threatened to give way. The air around it was icy, pressing against me like the weight of water in a deep ocean. Every instinct screamed to flee, yet I felt rooted to the spot. The Faceless One didn't move initially, only observed. Its presence was suffocating, an oppressive darkness that seemed to absorb the light from my flashlight. I could feel it, not just around me, but inside me. My thoughts felt invaded, my fear magnified, as if the house itself had poured all its malice into this entity. Then, slowly, impossibly, it raised one hand, motioning, not threatening, not inviting, but commanding. A shiver ran through me as a low whisper carried in the silence. "You are here, now." I stumbled backward, crashing into the railing of the staircase. The Faceless One glided closer, its movements smooth, unnaturally silent. With each step, the shadows along the walls stretched towards it, converging into a shifting black mass that seemed alive. The air grew colder,
so cold that my breath came out in thick clouds and my vision began to blur as fear clawed at my mind. I wanted to scream, but no sound emerged from my throat. Then the whispers returned, hundreds of voices layered together, calling my name, accusing me, warning me. Leave, join, see. The words weren't coherent, but the meaning was clear. The house, the faceless one, the shadows, they were all aware of me, measuring my terror, feeding on it. And worse, I realized, it was patient. It could wait forever. In a moment of desperate clarity, I grabbed a chair and swung it towards the figure, as though brute force could repel the impossible. The chair passed through the air without touching anything. The faceless one did not react. It was not bound by the laws of this world. A cold pressure pressed against my chest, stealing my breath. I fell to my knees, hands shaking, as I watched the featureless void lean slightly closer, tilting its non-existent head as if studying me. Time distorted. Seconds felt like hours. The house itself seemed to pulse in rhythm with my fear, each heartbeat echoing in every room, in every shadow. And then, just as suddenly as it appeared, the faceless one recoiled slightly, vanishing into the darkness of the hall, leaving only the echo of one last chilling whisper, "Soon you will understand." I collapsed on the staircase, heart hammering, drenched in cold sweat. The reality was undeniable. The house wasn't just haunted. The faceless one was real, patient, and it had chosen me. I was no longer just an intruder. I was a marked presence, observed, hunted, and trapped in a nightmare that had been waiting decades to find a witness.
The house no longer felt like a building. It felt like a living entity, aware of my every move, feeding off my fear, testing my sanity. After the encounter with the faceless one, every shadow, every sound, every creak of the floorboards became a threat. My flashlight flickered continuously, barely piercing the oppressive darkness. The whispers from the walls had returned, louder, more insistent, almost as if the house had learned to mimic my thoughts. As I cautiously moved through the main hallway, objects began to shift around me. A small vase on a side table toppled without warning, shattering into pieces that seemed to move slightly after hitting the floor, rolling unnaturally across the dust. A chair slid slowly toward me, though the floor was flat and smooth. My stomach churned. The house wasn't just haunted, it was orchestrating every movement, every sound to terrify me. The air grew thick and heavy, carrying a pungent, almost metallic scent. It smelled like damp soil mixed with something far fouler, like rusted iron or blood left to rot. I gagged, covering my mouth, but the smell clung to my lungs. I remembered the stories Martha told me in the diner, offerings left at the forest's edge, candles burned to appease restless spirits. Had the faceless one's hunger grown so strong it now controlled the air, the objects, the very essence of the house? I moved toward the attic, drawn by a compulsion I couldn't resist. Every instinct screamed to turn back, but I felt as though invisible hands were guiding me forward. The staircase groaned under my weight, each step echoing through the empty house like a drumbeat. Shadows clung to the walls, twisting and writhing, forming shapes that were almost human. I caught fleeting glimpses of a figure, tall, faceless, always just beyond the flashlight's reach. At the top of the stairs, I discovered a small hidden alcove behind a loose wooden panel. Inside, remnants of a ritual were scattered across the floor, a cracked porcelain doll missing its head, small bones arranged in a circle, and faded symbols etched into the wood in a pattern I recognized from Martha's stories, protection charms meant to ward off evil, though long decayed. I traced the symbols with my trembling fingers, and the whispers intensified, twisting into a cacophony of voices that filled the room, echoing from every corner. Suddenly, the room went completely dark. My flashlight died, leaving me in total blackness. I could feel the presence in the room with me,
the Faceless One, closer than ever. My heart raced, and I could feel the weight of its gaze, suffocating and omnipresent. The shadows moved with a will of their own, crawling along the walls, stretching across the floor. I stumbled backward, tripping over a loose floorboard. The whispers coalesced into a single voice, clear and cold. "You cannot leave. You are mine." I scrambled to my feet and fled down the stairs, heart hammering, every step an effort against the oppressive darkness. As I reached the hallway, a door slammed shut behind me with enough force to rattle the walls. Objects flew across the room, books, plates, a shattered mirror. In the reflection, I saw it, the faceless figure, standing silently, perfectly still, yet radiating a darkness that seemed to consume the light around it. Desperation clawed at my mind. I knew I had to escape, but the house seemed endless, twisting impossibly as I ran. I realized in a terrifying instant that this was no ordinary haunting. The Faceless One wasn't bound by walls or doors. It was part of the house itself, a predator in a labyrinth designed to ensnare. Every shadow, every whisper, every movement was a trap, a test, a signal that I was not safe and that my terror was feeding it. By the time I collapsed on the floor of the main hallway, gasping for breath, I understood the cruel truth. Cedar Creek's house was alive, ancient and merciless. The Faceless One had marked me, and the night was far from over.
By the early hours of the morning, my panic had grown into a desperate need to leave. I could no longer pretend curiosity would protect me. The house, with its creaking floorboards and whispering shadows, had become a labyrinth designed to trap and torment. Every hallway seemed longer than the last, every corner a potential hiding place for the Faceless One. My flashlight flickered violently, struggling to penetrate the darkness that seemed almost tangible, as if the shadows themselves had substance. I reached the front door, my hand trembling as I turned the doorknob. It was locked, not just ordinary locked. The door had a stubbornness, an unnatural resistance, as though the house itself refused to let me leave. Panic surged, my chest tightening. I pounded on the door, yelling, but the sound was swallowed instantly by the oppressive air. It was as if the house had absorbed my cries and spat them back in mocking silence. I tried the windows. Most were shattered, but the ones intact would not budge. I thought of the locals' warnings. The house doesn't let go of those it chooses. I felt the truth of those words pressing down on me. I was not a visitor. I was prey. Desperation propelled me back inside. I ran through the hallways, trying to find another exit, but every turn seemed to loop back to the same room, the main hallway with its peeling wallpaper and rotting floorboards. It was as if the house itself was alive, reshaping the layout, turning corridors into traps. Every step I took, I felt it, eyes upon me, a presence in the shadows, moving, watching, waiting. Then I saw it. The Faceless One stood at the end of the corridor, tall, featureless, its void-like face absorbing the weak light from my flashlight. It did not move at first, it simply watched, and the air grew heavier with its presence. I could feel the pull of its gaze, cold and insistent, reaching into my mind. My instincts screamed to run, but my feet felt glued to the floor. I remembered the protective charms the locals mentioned, the offerings left to pacify restless spirits. Frantically, I grabbed a small wooden trinket from the floor, a piece of bark with strange carvings, and held it in front of me. The Faceless One recoiled slightly, the shadows around it flickering, as if disturbed by the token. The whispers intensified, a chorus of voices screaming in rage and warning. I stumbled backward, holding the charm tightly, willing it to work, praying it would grant me a moment of reprieve. I ran. Hallways twisted unnaturally. Doors that had been opened before now blocked my path. The house had become a maze, designed to confuse and terrify.
Behind me, the faintest sound of movement, a soft glide across the floor, reminded me that I was never alone. The Faceless One followed silently, patient, its featureless face turned toward me, studying, calculating. Hours, or maybe minutes, time felt meaningless, passed as I navigated the endless corridors. I tried doors, windows, even a hidden hatch in the floor, but each attempt led me back to the same hallway, the same oppressive shadows. The house was teaching me, testing me, waiting for my fear to peak. Eventually, I collapsed against a wall, heart pounding, breath ragged. The Faceless One stood at the far end of the corridor, unwavering, a silent judge of my desperation. The whispers had faded into a single voice, cold and deliberate. "You cannot leave, not yet." I realized then that escape was not just physical. The house had claimed me, marked me, and until it was satisfied, I would remain trapped within its walls, watched, hunted, and tormented. I sat on the floor, shivering, realizing the cruel truth. The house did not want intruders. It wanted witnesses, and I was now one of them.
By the 9th hour of my ordeal, exhaustion had dulled my senses, but desperation sharpened my instincts. The house had revealed itself as a living, breathing entity, aware of every heartbeat, every shiver, every flicker of fear. I wandered blindly through hallways that twisted impossibly, doors that led me back to the same room, until I stumbled upon something I hadn't noticed before. A small, almost imperceptible door hidden behind a tattered curtain in the corner of the main hallway. It was narrow, built into the wall, its edges worn by decades of neglect. The doorknob was cold, icy even, and the wood seemed unnaturally dense. Trembling, I turned it, half expecting it to resist, and it swung open to reveal a staircase leading down into darkness. A faint scent of earth and old incense wafted up, mixed with that metallic tang I had smelled before, the same smell that had filled the house since my arrival. I descended cautiously, each step echoing as if the walls themselves were listening. At the bottom, I entered a small, vaulted chamber. The air was heavy, almost viscous, pressing against me. In the center of the room stood an altar, worn and darkened by age. Bones, small trinkets, and cracked candles littered its surface. Symbols, etched into the wood in precise patterns, glowed faintly under the flashlight's beam. I recognized some from the journals I had found, protection rituals designed to appease spirits, but others were strange, unfamiliar, written in a mix of archaic English and symbols that seemed almost alive. I realized with growing horror that this altar was the origin point of the Faceless One. The house's darkness, its power, radiated from this chamber. The figure had not been haunting me at random. It had been guiding me here, drawing me into its center, showing me the truth. My eyes caught a faded portrait above the altar. A man, presumably Mr. Hollister, standing proudly with his family. One face was missing, blank, empty. My stomach churned. I understood then the Faceless One was a soul incomplete, seeking to fill the void of the faces it had stolen over decades. The whispers returned, now clearer, emanating from the walls themselves. "You see now, you understand, and you will join us." Panic surged through me as the shadows in the room pulsed and stretched, converging around the altar. The air grew colder, heavier, and the sense of being watched became unbearable. The Faceless One emerged from the darkness, its featureless face leveled at me, a void of darkness absorbing every ounce of light. It was no longer distant. It was here, in this chamber, at the heart of its power. I backed away, tripping over a pile of old bones.
One hand touched the altar, and the shadows recoiled slightly, as if angered by my interference. I realized with terror that the rituals of old, meant to contain or appease the entity, had failed long ago. The Faceless One had endured, learned, and grown stronger with every fear it consumed. Frantically, I examined the symbols, tracing their shapes with trembling fingers. Some of the markings suggested a method to repel it, a way to survive its attention if one acted quickly. But the clock was ticking. Every second spent in the chamber, every shallow breath I took was feeding its awareness of me. I could feel it, studying, probing, learning my fear, calculating its next move. Suddenly, the shadows shifted violently, and the room seemed to contract. The Faceless One advanced, impossibly silent, its presence smothering all light. I realized with absolute certainty that this was the culmination of every legend I had heard, every warning whispered in Cedar Creek. This entity did not simply haunt, it claimed. And tonight, it had claimed me as its witness, its prey, and perhaps, one day, as its next face. I bolted from the chamber, stumbling up the stairs, but the image of the altar, the symbols, and the blank face of the entity burned into my mind. The revelation was complete. The Faceless One was not a ghost, not a trick of shadows. It was a predator, born of fear, centuries old, feeding on the terror of those foolish enough to enter its home. And I was trapped, with the house, with it, in a nightmare that would not end until it was satisfied.
By the 10th hour, exhaustion had become a physical weight. My limbs were trembling, my lungs burned, and my mind teetered on the edge of collapse. The house of Cedar Creek had transformed into a living nightmare, twisting reality with every step I took. Hallways looped impossibly, shadows stretched like living creatures, and whispers filled the air in a symphony of malice. Every instinct screamed that there was no escape, but I couldn't stop moving. I had to face it, whatever it was, if I wanted to survive. I returned to the main hallway, the same one that had haunted me since my arrival. The shadows pulsed and writhed, and I could feel them pressing against my skin. And then I saw it, the Faceless One, standing at the far end, impossibly tall, featureless, radiating a darkness that seemed to devour the weak light from my flashlight. Its presence was overwhelming, suffocating, a force of nature rather than a mere entity. I remembered the symbols from the hidden chamber, the faint protective markings on the altar. Desperation fueled my hands as I grabbed a piece of chalk I had found in one of the old drawers and began tracing the shapes on the floor, copying them from memory. The shadows recoiled slightly, writhing in anger, the whispers rising to a deafening crescendo. It advanced, slowly, deliberately, testing me, studying my fear. "You cannot leave," it whispered, not with a voice, but a feeling, a direct intrusion into my mind. Every thought, every memory, every fear was laid bare. My heartbeat thundered as I completed the final symbol, stepping back to see the chalk markings glow faintly, shimmering with a cold light that pushed against the darkness. The Faceless One hesitated, the first sign of uncertainty. The air vibrated, thick and heavy, carrying the metallic scent of blood and rust. Shadows surged forward, clawing at my legs, but I felt a sudden surge of courage, a defiance I didn't know I possessed. I spoke aloud, voice shaking but resolute. "You do not control me. I am not yours." The entity froze, its faceless void tilting almost curiously. Then, as if in response, the house itself trembled. Floorboards groaned, walls rattled, and a sudden gust of wind swept through the hallways.
The Faceless One recoiled further, shadows writhing around it like flames being smothered. I could feel the energy shift, a fragile balance between fear and defiance. But the entity was patient. It did not retreat completely. It lingered at the edge of the shadows, studying, waiting. The whispers faded into a low hum, as though acknowledging my defiance, but also reminding me that it had endured centuries and would endure long after me. It was a predator, and I was only a momentary challenge in its endless existence. I stumbled backward toward the front door, chalk in hand, and managed to pry it open. Cold night air rushed in, sharp and crisp, carrying the scent of pine and freedom. The shadows did not follow, not entirely. I didn't look back, but I felt its gaze, a lingering emptiness that pressed against my mind, promising it had not forgotten me. I ran into the forest, breath ragged, body trembling, heart still hammering in terror and disbelief. Cedar Creek faded behind me, the house looming like a dark memory I could never fully shake. I had survived, barely, but the knowledge remained. The Faceless One was real. It was patient. It was eternal. And one day, it would wait again for the next curious soul to wander into its domain. As I stumbled onto the road, dawn breaking over the trees, I realized the truth that had been whispered by the locals all along. Some nightmares are alive, and some houses never forget. If you want to uncover more terrifying stories like this, hit that subscribe button. Follow me as I explore the darkest corners of the world, where the line between reality and nightmare is thinner than you think. The Faceless One waits. Will you dare to see it?
As the sun rose over Cedar Creek, the events of the night felt almost surreal. The house, the shadows, the whispers, they were all real, yet impossible to fully grasp. My mind replayed every step, every heartbeat, every fleeting glimpse of the Faceless One. Even in the daylight, the memory clung to me, a shadow that could not be shaken. But despite the terror, I felt an odd sense of respect for the house and the entity within it. It was ancient, patient, and eternal, a force that had endured centuries, surviving the curiosity and folly of countless souls. I spoke with a few locals again, now in the safety of daylight. Their eyes, wary but knowing, confirmed what I had experienced. The rituals, the offerings, the whispered warnings, they were not just folklore. They were survival, passed down through generations in a town that had learned the hard way to respect the darkness that lingered at the edges of the forest. They smiled faintly, not cruelly, but with understanding. "You've seen it now," one elderly man said softly, "and that is more than most ever will. Remember, some things are best treated with caution and respect." I left Cedar Creek with my camera, journal, and a heart still pounding from the memories of the night. The Faceless One did not follow me out of the forest, but I knew deep down it had marked me. That emptiness where its face should be, the void I had glimpsed, would haunt my dreams, a reminder that some nightmares are eternal. Yet, in the same breath, I also realized something empowering. I had faced it. I had survived the house, the shadows, the whispers, and perhaps by witnessing its existence, I had honored the stories of those who had come before, who had warned the curious and the brave alike. So, to all of you reading this, remember, there are places in the world where curiosity can be dangerous, where shadows move on their own, and where the unknown is waiting patiently to test your courage. If you ever find yourself near a forgotten house, in a forest where whispers ride the wind, listen closely, respect the darkness, and never underestimate what might be watching, waiting for the next story to unfold. If you enjoyed this journey into the terrifying and mysterious, make sure to subscribe. There are countless stories like this, hidden in forgotten corners of the world, where legends,
folklore, and real encounters blur the line between reality and nightmare. The Faceless One waits, and someday it may wait for you. But for now, step back into the light, take a deep breath, and remember, curiosity is thrilling, but caution is survival.